Love. It is ethereal, yet tangible. It binds our communities together, and is a force that transcends both time and space if we're functioning off of interstellar rules. And if the whole being a red balloon thing didn't give it away, I'm something of a romantic myself, going out of my way to indulge in entertainment that depicts this connection that people share in all forms of media. From comedy to action adventure to sci-fi and more. Throw in a bit of romance, and you've got me defending your project till my dying day. You know, so long as the romance isn't like creepy or nothing. And superheroes are no stranger to this sort of affection either, with plenty amongst their ranks partaking in this time-honored tradition dating back to the very first, or at least the first who still maintain their relevance today, that being Superman and Lois Lane, the de facto mother and father of this genre. These guys have been making googly eyes and smacking lips with each other since before my grandparents were even born. Plus, with Valentine's Day just around the corner, I think we should pay a bit of tribute to comic books' most iconic pairing. And over the years, we've seen countless incarnations of this dynamic duo, getting together and forming a full-blown relationship, sometimes even going so far as to settle down in holy matrimony. From Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, to Smallville, to Superman the Animated Series, plenty of shows and movies have put this power couple together on screen, with varying levels of quality in their outcome.
Well, Lois, the truth is, I'm actually Superman in disguise, and I only pretend to be a journalist in order to hear about disasters as they happen and then squeeze you out of the byline.
You're a sick man, Kent.
But to me, none other have managed to capture that partnership and the passion that these two share with each other, much like the latest show based on these characters, that being Superman and Lois. And today, I want to talk about it. What about the relationship depicted in Superman and Lois is so special? How does it capture the spirit of its titular characters? And why is it, in my opinion, the best depiction of these two's relationship ever put on screen? So take off those big old glasses hiding your finely groomed eyebrows and also protecting your secret identity, and let's discuss. So Superman and Lois is a TV series based on the characters of the same name, obviously, and stars Tyler Hoechlin of Teen Wolf fame as Superman, and Betsy Tulloch as the star reporter Lois Lane. And it's sort of a spin-off of that Supergirl show that took place in the CW's shared cinematic universe, affectionately titled the Arrowverse. But aside from a few cast members carrying over, it's pretty much entirely disconnected from anything that came before, with like 1 or 2 cameos and all of them being alternate versions of their Arrowverse counterparts. The show is pretty much a fresh take on these characters and the world that they inhabit, but with the added twist that with this go around, Superman and Lois are already married and raising a pair of twin boys. And the story essentially follows this super family unit returning to Clark's hometown of Smallville after his mother passes away due to natural causes. And in an effort to stave off having to sell his childhood home, Clark moves his family out to the middle of Kansas in order to give them a chance to see the town that he grew up in, grow closer together, and maybe even get away from all the stresses of the city life. Also, the boys are starting to develop superpowers, so probably good that they do it on a farm and not like in a tiny apartment unit. Add in a few conspiracies going on with businesses around Smallville, and you have yourself to set up to what are honestly some of the most wholesome and incredible 4 seasons of television this character has ever seen. Watching the family go through various highs and lows, developing new relationships, and growing into an unbreakable family unit that can weather any hardship. And if you want to help us around here weather any hardship, liking, commenting, and subscribing will help us create a community that's as strong as the Man of Steel's. And as much as I could keep singing the praises of the show, with all the romance in the air right now being so palpable that even a couple got married at the frickin' Super Bowl, I want to take the time today to focus in on the relationship and love shared between our 2 leads. Because it honestly feels like some of the most real and genuine storytelling that a character as larger in life as Superman has received. That might risk us talking about some spoilers in the show, so just be wary of that before continuing. Now, the first point I want to praise about these two's relationship is its honesty. Now, this comes in a few aspects. First, yes, the two are very honest with each other, which in superhero relationships isn't always the case. If you know anything about me, then you'll remember that I am a huge fan of the secret identity. You know, that thing where we see our hero partition their lives into 2 aspects, one dedicated to the heroics, and to the other their personal life. It's a fun part of the superhero trope that I think gives a lot of insight into who they are, understanding that they aren't doing these good deeds because they expect to be rewarded, but rather because they know it's the right thing to do, and will forego the praise just to live a normal life. And Superman is a prime example of this, being such an immense presence that many might think him to be a god amongst men, but the secret identity helps ground him and keep him connected to the world that he protects. And a lot of stories like to focus on this aspect of the character, resulting in him doing things like keeping his identity from those he's close to, outside of, the Kents and maybe a friend here and there. So the folks of the Daily Planet often are kept in the dark, and that includes Lois Lane. And for many prior eras in this character's history, this would be the status quo for the character. But lately, they've kind of foregone this, allowing Lois to be brought in on the fold, and this shows another example of that trend. By the time we pick up, Lois has already found out who Clark is, and the two are operating knowing where the other one goes at night. And while I will admit I do kind of miss this aspect of Superman having to balance both his personal and super life, even with the people he loves, it has been done so many times for so long that I understand just wanting to move past it and get to the good parts where they actually can speak fully truthful with one another. But just knowing his secret identity is only a part of this honesty that I'm a huge fan of, because beyond the hidden persona, their ability to remain on the same page with one another is a constant throughout the entire show, with both always being able to let the other in and keeping their partner in the loop, so that they can work together to overcome the challenges that come their way. And considering the kind of lives that both of them lead, that happens more often than you think. Very rarely does either one hide something from the other, and when they do, it's often in a situation where you can understand why they would do so, like with the case of something like Lois's cancer diagnosis, where at first she just doesn't tell anyone and throws herself 100% into her work, only for it to come out to a total stranger in the heat of the moment, where Superman also finds out. Instead of treating this like a betrayal of his trust, both come to the understanding that because Lois's relationship with Superman has given her the freedom to act knowing that there's someone looking out for her, this situation they find themselves in where there's nothing he can do to protect her is a moment of vulnerability that she's just not used to. And so did the very human thing by denying her reality until it was just no longer possible.
I should have told you sooner.
What? No. You have nothing to apologize for.
And the two proceed accordingly, with Clark doing his part to be there for the woman he loves, however she best needs. And that leads us well to the next point I want to praise about their relationship with its dynamism. Because despite these two being married for nearly 2 decades, they still have plenty of ups and downs in their relationship that make them more than just a boring married couple. I mentioned before that the two have very strong communication skills, which makes sense considering both are journalists, but their ability to communicate with one another is also written in an incredibly believable way. All too often when you see characters who are good at communicating, in stories, it does kind of lack that human quality, where it feels like you've got HR in the room, keeping a checklist to make sure they don't say anything wrong. A good example of this comes from the video game Spider-Man 2 released for the PS5, where in this game, Peter and Mary Jane don't really talk to each other like people.
Coney might be the best place to people watch.
True. Oh, I want a hat like that guy's.
Every disagreement feels like they've unearthed a trip mine, which they quickly retreat from to get back to their comfort zone. And the two never really challenge each other, you know, when they're in the right state of mind and not controlled by a symbiote.
Why don't you pop some more pills and say what you really feel?
Hey,
And they always just feel like they're one dispute away from calling it quits, so instead they just shower each other with generic praise and what feels like toxic positivity.
we'll figure it out.
I don't deserve you.
But Lois and Clark do not have this problem. For one, I mean, obviously they're a bit older, so you'd think that they would have found a way to navigate these situations a long time ago. But even in their earlier years, they still have this chemistry and ability to get on the same page that's just lacking in so many other superhero romances. But they also have falling outs and disagreements that make their problem solving all the more intriguing because they don't always agree on everything. And the writers have demonstrated an ability to have them approach each other's problems without making them feel like that they're professional psychologists reading directly from the DSM-5, and instead are just an emotionally conscious couple who understands how the other ticks. So the trust and honesty that the two share is not only a healthy example of how adults can communicate with each other, but they also have believable pitfalls and failings that stem directly from who they are as people. And it is something that's unique to them, because when it comes to other characters, that melodrama that often comes from CW productions, well, it's still here, it's just not present with this couple. Other people yell at each other, disagree, and have arguments and fallouts that really shouldn't happen if they just cleared a few things up. But because it's in this show and the writers have demonstrated that they can create conflict without manufacturing it from some cheap misunderstanding, then it feels like a demonstration as to how far this couple has come when contrasting these other emotional hotheads in Smallville. And it's not like they just had a connection like this handed to them on a silver platter, as the show makes it clear that over the years, they have had plenty of fallings out and roadblocks placed in front of them, some of which nearly did them in for good.
Do you remember the first time I caught you listening in on me?
Thought I was gonna lose you forever.
You almost did.
And beyond just the pitfalls between each other, there's also plenty of outside factors that were making an active effort to keep the two apart. A good example of this is the character of Sam Lane, who, throughout the entire series, has this aura of distrust and worry that harm could fall upon his family, which is incredibly warranted considering his profession. but it has caused him to push plenty of people away, including those very same loved ones. And even in their earlier years, manifested in the form of his dislike for the Man of Steel, who he slowly was able to develop a relationship with, which nearly came to a collapse once he revealed that he was also the man marrying his daughter. And the only reason that he ever softened on Clark was that he demonstrated his commitment to Lois, willing to go so far as to defy Sam's orders, and still going through with marrying her.
I came here to ask for your blessing, but I want to be clear, I do intend to marry your daughter.
And though the two have come to an understanding after decades of being in this position, you can still see glimpses of these old grudges that have melted away with time due to just the sheer love that these two have for each other. So much so that even Sam himself was able to let his guard down and be willing to open himself up to love again. That obviously didn't work out too well, but I mean, hey, maybe those walls were there for a reason. The fact that these two's love is not only able to conquer all, but also able to have a positive influence on others in the world they exist in, just makes it feel all the more real and tangible. And the final thing I want to praise about these folks' relationship is its passion. Because a big issue I have with a lot of superhero stories is that once a two pairing get together, they pretty much turn into this combined unit lacking in any sort of conflict, or are constantly fighting it at each other's throats. And they just seem to lose that initial spark that brought them together in the first place, reducing them into these lifeless, miserable husks of their former selves. However, this is not the case here in Clark and Lois' relationship, where despite being married for nearly 20 years now, the two just can't seem to keep their hands off of each other, with honest affection not just being shown by their personalities, but also because, I mean, just look at these people. The show manages to maintain that love that they have for each other in all respects. And it's not like they're only in this relationship because they're attracted to one another, but rather, their demonstration of affection is not only done through their appreciation of the other's personality and contributions, but is also indicative of the initial element that caught the other's eye, and further contributes to the feeling of comfort and safety that the two feel when in each other's presence. And this allows for the showrunners to visually demonstrate their love without a single word needing to be spoken. And again, look at these people. That's a pretty couple. It also goes a long way to helping this relationship feel more human than something like those sexless automatons over at Marvel, where it feels like even broaching the topic of something as an adult as physical affection is something that the company producing this thing is unwilling to touch with a 10-foot pole. And I understand that these things are made for families, and I'm not asking for anything graphic, just something more than just holding hands and kissing at the end. And that's even when they're willing to allow their characters to be in a relationship at all. I mean, the last time Marvel was even willing to confirm its characters had sex was in this 10-second scene in the Eternals, which was immediately followed up by a marriage. Guess there's also She-Hulk, but that show's kind of dead in the water, so. There's also, I guess, the implication with the fact that a couple of its characters had kids, but that's just kind of the main way people are made, so not really given credit there.
People create smaller people, children.
Meanwhile, something like Superman and Lois makes this sort of coupling feel so effortless and casual. Like it's just something that's part of their natural lives and isn't something that needs constant approval from the higher-ups. And to me, that's a much more mature take on an adult relationship than simply just trying to ignore it outright. So those are the reasons why I believe that Superman and Lois in this series have the strongest relationship in comic book adaptation history. A power couple ripped straight off the page, with a well-rounded exploration of the bond these two share between each other, by not just depicting the initial stages of their meet-cute, culminating into a marriage at which point the series ends. Instead, it explores a part of their life that so many couples end up experiencing, this being life after marriage, involving things like raising kids and making a life for themselves. And that's pretty bold considering that most adaptations involving these two follow them while they're somewhere in between their 20s and 30s. And not so much when they're in their mid to late 40s, a period plenty of comic book stories fear to enter altogether, worrying that it will alienate their target audience. But the show manages to maintain its interest in its entire cast of characters by consistently giving them relatable and down-to-earth problems to deal with in between the high-flying superheroics. And it's all built upon the relationship set by what is the most iconic pairing in comic book history. Unless you're in a hot topic and then for some reason they say it's Harley Quinn and the Joker, and if that's really what people think the height of this medium can produce, then we failed as a society. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Let's go home.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you stuck all the way to the end, why not check out another one of our videos on screen now? And if you'd like to chat with us directly, come join our Discord. Link in the description below.